So we're going to go ahead and get started. So on this little short sentences that I gave you guys today, these little preschool sentences that I gave. All right, so what's our first word over here? Okay, so we've got a wa here and it's pointed patah. So we know that we're going to have the V sound and then the short A. So va. Then we have a yud and it's got what? Dagesh, right? So we're going to do what with it? We're going to double it because it's not a beged kafat letter. So that goes from being va to vai. You remember our diphthongs last week? Vai. And we're going to pick up the second Y and the kirik yod, right? And then we're also going to add this resh on the end. Okay, so we have vayi. Then, okay, so what type of vowel is the... It is a full vowel variant. So this shva becomes what? Vocal. So vayi re u. All right. The aleph is not doing anything here. Okay. But it is showing us part of our root word. That's why it's not been got rid of. Okay. So we have vayi reu. Vayireu. All right, now we've got a hyphenated word here. So what's the first part of our hyphenated word? Coal, right? Coal. All right. So what about the second part of our hyphenated word? We have aleph pointed kamatz, right? Dalet pointed kamatz with mem sofit. Adam. So kol adam. All right. Vayireu kol adam. What's our next word here? All right. So we have the wa pointed patak. So va. But then we have the yud with the dagesh again, right? So that goes from being va to vai. Remember our diphthong. So vai. Then we have a yud pointed patah ya. Then we've got gimel. Now, is this beged kafat? But it's also following another vowel point. So this goes from being ya to yag. So vayag. Then we have the gimel pointed kirikyo, gi. Then we have a dalet followed by a wa pointed shuruk. Do. Vayagidu. Vayagidu. All right, what about this next word here? Okay, we've got the letter pei, right? Got dagesh inside, so that's a P. And it's pointed cholem, so po. Then we have ayin, silent letter, but it's pointed with patak followed by lamed. Al. Poal. Poal. Okay? Poal. That's a good one right there. All right, so vayireu kol adam vayigidu poal. All right, what's our next word here? Lo him, right? Aleph, silent letter pointed chetef segol. Lamed pointed holem, lo. All right. Hey pointed kiri kyod with mem sofit. Im, him, Elohim. Elohim. All right. What about our next word? All right, so we have a wa pointed shuruk, right? Ooh. We can say ooh because our next letter is mem. Remember, when we have a wa at the beginning, if it's pointed shuruk, it can say ooh if it's followed by a mem or a lamed or a beit. There's several letters, right? So in this case, we're being followed by a mem. So we have ooh, then mem pointed patah, ma. Then we have ayin pointed how? Katef patah. So shorten or reduced a, right? Umma'a. Then we have a sin, right? Indicators on the left-hand side. Sin, pointed sere, right? So se. Then we have a hey followed by wa pointed shuruk. Hu. Umma'asehu. 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 Uma'asehu. All right, what's our next word here? All right, so we have a hey pointed kirik followed by sin pointed how? Silent shva. His, right? His. Then we have the letter kaf, and it's pointed how? Kirik yod, right? All right. Ki. Then we have lamed followed by wa pointed shuruk. Lu. Hiskilu. Right? Look, your meteg is in the middle. Right? So you're going to stress the word in the middle, not at the end. Hiskilu. Right? Hiskilu. All right. So here's our sentence. Let's read it together. Vayireu kol adam vayagidu po'al Elohim u'ma'aseu hiskilu. All right, let's do it again. All right. Vayireu kol adam vayagidu po'al Elohim u'ma'aseu hiskilu. All right, so vayireu. So I gave you an important clue in the very first bit talking about this word. What did I tell you? Well, we knew that. But it was pertaining to the root word. Okay, so if there is an aleph in the root word, so what do we think our root word is? Yud Resh Aleph, which is what word? Yareh. Okay. So what does the word Yareh mean? What does Yareh mean? To fear. So it's both. Mm-hmm. All right. So we know that this is the root word. So what do we need to do now? What we normally do is look for prefixes and suffixes, right? So we know where our root word is. So look what that leaves us with. A wa at the beginning, a yud, and then one at the end. So the wa is a prefix. And then what about yud as a prefix? Will with an implied he. Okay, so and will fear who? Right. You see this ooh at the end? They. Right? So how would we translate that? And they will fear. Very good. All right. Now we have kol adam. Kol means what? All, or it's another word for all. No. Starts with an E. Every. And then Adam is not necessarily Adam. It's being used here in the sense of mankind, right? So it says here, and they will fear every man. Yes. All right. So how are we going to translate that little part? How would we do that? And every man will fear. All right. And every man will. What about vayagidu? And they will. All right. So the word you're looking for here, huh? It's gid. Gid. All right. So to shout or to proclaim, right? So every man will fear, and they will, we can use proclaim, right? And they will proclaim poal. What is the word poal? You have. Usually it's used in the sense of like when it talks about a wonder or his wondrous works. Poal is a deed or something that happens that you really don't have an explanation. Okay. So, and they will proclaim deeds with an implied of, because who's making the deeds? Who's doing the deeds? Elohim. So, every man will fear and they will proclaim the deeds of Elohim. Right? What about umaasehu? Oh, you're doing so good. You're really close. And their maaseh, their what? Their deeds, their actions. Okay? We have a book, Maaseh Shlachim, right? The Acts of the Apostles. So, or the Acts of the Sent Ones. So, Maaseh, all right? And their deeds or their actions. What about Hiskilu? Right. Okay, so the word here is, or the root word here is sakal, which means to ruminate upon or to contemplate, to think about. So tell me what it is. They will what? And their deeds, they will what? I'm going to use contemplate because that's a little more. Well, no, not that. It carries a little bit more weight than to think about something. Okay, contemplating means like that's like soul searching basically. It's kind of It's on a deeper level than just thinking about something. All right. So, and every man will fear, and they will proclaim the deeds of Elohim, and their actions they will contemplate. So, what we're looking at here is Psalm 64 and 9. But there's something very interesting here. I want to make sure you guys are paying attention to me. Something very important here. When you read this in the King James, this is why we do this, right? When you read it in the King James, it says, and all men shall fear. We can see that, right? And shall declare the work of Elohim. Okay, so, and they'll proclaim the deeds of Elohim. But the King James says, for they shall wisely consider of his doing. So, what the translators translated this as his deeds they will contemplate. So does that make any sense though? If they are fearing and revering him, it makes more sense to me that they will contemplate their deeds. And that even goes as far as we see this ooh on the end, meaning they. How did they get his out of that? Well, okay, so Paul is something like something miraculous. Okay? Well, look at the roots. Poal versus maaseh. A maaseh is something that you do, right? That's my point. Why would they focus on? Okay, so they already fear him, they already revere him, they already hold him in awe, and they're proclaiming his incredible things, his miracles, right? His miraculous deeds that he's done. So why would they contemplate his actions? They've already shown, and it doesn't even make sense because of this ooh on the end. They're contemplating their actions. Because it's like, am I doing everything? I'm seeing him and we're talking about his works. What am I doing to make sure that makes more sense that they would be contemplating their own actions instead of his? Because they're proclaiming his deeds, right? These who are fearing, they're proclaiming his deeds. So it makes more sense. And like I said, when I saw this ooh on the end, I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense at all with the way that it was translated in the King James. Even in a New King James or in a restored name King James, it all says his. But that doesn't make sense. That should be their actions, their content. That's why I said thinking about and contemplating is, you contemplate about something being like, am I doing everything am I really doing what I should be? That kind of a thing. So it makes more sense to me this way. I may be wrong, but it just makes more sense to me like this, that they would be weighing their own actions. What do you guys think? To me, it makes a lot more sense that they would weigh their own actions. You know what I mean? Because that's what Shaul said, right? Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. You've got to look at, what am I doing? Am I doing this? You know what I mean? Compared to what he's doing, am I doing what I can to stay in line, or what? You know what I mean? That's the way it seems to me. Follow me as I follow Moshiach. So that's Psalm 64 and 9, okay? Psalm 64 and 9. Do what? Well, we didn't know any different. All right, so let's work on this next part here. All right, let's work on this next part here. So, what's our first word we have here? Yismach. All right, so you have a yud, pointed kirik, with a sin, pointed silent shiva. Yis. Then we have a mem, pointed patak, with a chet behind it. Mach. All right, yismach. Yismach. All right, what about our next word? Tzaddik, right? So we have the tzadi pointed patach, the dalet pointed how? Dagesh, right? So we're going to go ahead and double it too, even as a begid kafat letter. So we have the first syllable goes from being tza to tzad. Then we pick up the second dalet and the kirik yod and the kuf at the end, right? Dik. Tzaddik. All right, tzaddik. All right, what about our next word? Bayawa, right? So bait, pointed patach, ba, and then yud hey wah hey, bayawa. All right, bayawa. What about our next word here? All right, vechasa. All right, so we have a wa pointed vocal shavak at the beginning of a word. Ve. Then we have a chet, right? And it's pointed kamatz, cha. And then a samek, pointed kamatz, he, sa. Right? Vechasa. Vechasa. All right, what about this next word? This little short guy here. Bo. All right, second line, what do we have? All right, so we have the wa pointed with a vocal shva, ve. And we have a yud pointed kirik, followed by a tav with vocal shva, right? Or silent shva, I mean. So ve. Then we have yit. And we have a hey pointed patach, right? Ha. Then we've got what? Lamed here. Silent shva. Hal. And then we pick up the second one. Lamed, followed by wa pointed shurup lu. All right. Veyit halu. Veyit halu. All right, and now look here, we got a word with a double hyphen in it. So what's our first word? Kol, right? What about our second one? All right, so we have a yud pointed kirik, yi, then the letter shin, indicators on the right-hand side, and it's pointed with silent shiva. Close the syllable. Yish, and we have a resh pointed sere yod, right? Ray. Yishrei. Yishrei. And then lamed pointed sere with a veit behind it. Lev. All right. So we've transliterated our sentence. So let's read it together. We have Yismach Tzadik Bayawa Bechasa Bo Veyithalu Kol Yishrelev. Let's do it again. Yismach Tzadik Bayawa Bechasa Bo Veyithalu Kol Yisrelev. All right. So what about the word yismach? What's yismach mean? All right. So the root, if we're looking for a root, which we always do, we see the word samach. All right. Samach. So what? Okay. So the yud is a prefix meaning will with an implied masculinity. All right. So what about samach? What does samach? What's that root word mean? Yeah, it's the root of that word. Okay, so there you go. So what we're gonna say is will, and like I said, we're gonna put parentheses, but he, right? He will rejoice. All right, tzaddik. Okay, so who's the one doing the rejoicing? This righteous guy right here, this tzaddik, right? So I'm gonna write the righteous because we're talking about a righteous person. And then by Yahweh. How's he going to rejoice? He's going to rejoice in Yahweh. Right? Because we know it, the scriptures tell us that our strength doesn't come from ourselves, it comes from him, right? That we are to rejoice in him and his goodness. All right, what about vechasa? Very good. The wa, used at the beginning, is a prefix that means and. What are you mumbling about? What are you talking about, sis? No. It's just a sound, okay? Like I said, we look at the letter and we know that it's a prefix. The bait is a either bait or vate. It is a prefix that means in. Right? So wa as a prefix and so that leaves us with the word chasa, which means to hide or to take refuge. Okay? So this righteous guy is going to rejoice in Yahweh and do what? Let's say take refuge because we're and take refuge where? So the vate is in what? In where? In him, the O. So it's actually, if we were to break it apart, it's ba o. But we see it, it's going to be pronounced as bo, right? But the context is that it's in him. Okay? So and take refuge in him, right? What about veyit halu? Who? Who will? Ah, there you go. And va y, right? He and he will, and then you've got halal, right? Will praise, and then the u at the end, they. Okay, so and they will praise, right? And they will praise. What about kol yishrelev? Kol is all. Lev is heart. So what is yishreh? So you've got an infix here. So this yud at the end of Yishrei is an infix, meaning of, masculine infix. So what's that leave us with as a root word? Which means what? So all those who are upright of heart. So that's who's going to be doing the rejoicing, right? Those are who are going to be doing the praising. So this is Psalm 64 and 10. This is the very next one. King James says, the righteous shall be glad in Yahweh. So the righteous one will rejoice in Yahweh, right? And shall trust in him. So that's where the chasa comes from. So he's going to put his trust in him, right? He's going to put his trust in Yahweh. He's going to hide himself in Yahweh, right? Because he's that impenetrable fortress, right? He's that that place of solace and rest, that place of protection. So he's going to trust in him, and all the upright in heart shall glory. Okay. So again, they're all going to praise. They're all going to give glory. And who are they that are going to do it? The ones who are upright in heart. Any questions on this one? Pretty good. Well, you guys are doing really good. I'm proud of you. Huh. All right. Let's move on to our paleo word. It's a pretty simple one. It's a word we've all seen a bajillion and a half times. It's important that we get the half bajillion in there. All right. So, what is our first letter here? That's the letter mem, right? All right. What about our second one? It's a sheen. All right. What about our third letter? That is a kaf. And then what about our last one? Letter nun. All right. So let's put some vowels in here. So we're going to put an I between the mem and the sheen. And then we're going to put an A in between the kaf and the nun. That gives us the word mishkan, which means what? Tabernacle, right? We take that to mean tabernacle. It's interesting. The word mishkan can mean a dwelling place, somewhere to live, somewhere to stay. What's really funny is it can get pretty specific. It can also mean, it's so funny, it can mean a shepherd's hut is what it can mean. So I thought that was pretty, I just think it's kind of neat, it's not really a coincidence, I don't think, but it can mean a shepherd's hut as well. So you've got the word mishkan. Well, we take to mean a tabernacle, a dwelling place, right? So let's take a look at our letters right quick. What do we have in this mem? All right. We talked about the tabernacle today, right? Okay. So we have anointing, and it's important to remember that there was anointing there, right? There was anointing oil. Aaron had the oil all over him, right? So there was anointing there. They said that the Father dwelt between the cherubim, right? So there's you're going to be in his presence. There's going to be something there. All right. So what about the sheen? Wisdom. Okay. Because what did it say? It said that all the nations around you are going to say what? Who are these wise and understanding people who have this law so great and so righteous? As all this Torah which we put before you this day. All right, so, ma'am? So there's wisdom there. Okay, what about the kaf? All right, so the kaf is the open hand, right, ma'am? Giving and receiving. I think so the tabernacle, right? They received their living through what? Through the kindness and through the charity of others, right? So we can look at it as charity, right? Because now when I say charity, I'm not just talking about, I'm talking about, there's kindness and mercy and these things were there. All right, and then what about the noon? All right, so life, right? So the noon, life. All right, so we talked about the we talked about the well, let's talk about this real quick. So we've talked about all these positive things here. So let's take a look at the negative side of this. And you'll see there's something real neat here. So we have on the negative side, we have what? We've got chaos. All right. On the negative side of Shin, what do we have? We've got destruction. What is it in the picture? Teeth, right? So check this out. What about backbiting? Gossip. All right. So what do we have on the negative side of the kaf? What's the opposite of charity? Or greed, avarice, as the King Jameses want to call it. All right. And then what about on the other side? What's on the negative side of the life? Let's say decay, both physical and moral. Okay. So here's the thing. When the Father was in it, it had all these things on the top. There was that anointing there, right? There was wisdom. There was charity and giving. There was life. And we see that this tabernacle was what? What was it? It was his dwelling place, right? A tabernacle is a dwelling place. So it was Yahweh's dwelling place. And also a picture of his son. Right? That's why it was so important. Like he said, told him so many times, make sure that you build it just like I told you to. Because if it was off 1 degree, it wasn't a picture of his son, right? But what was very important to remember is that when he was there, right? When Yahweh was in charge of it, when he was in the driver's seat, shall we say, it was a place of anointing, wisdom, charity, and life. All of these things were there when he was present. But we know in the book of Ezekiel what happened. He said, look, these guys, I can't deal with them anymore. And he went to the door, and he went to the threshold, and he went to the courtyard, and he went to the mountaintop, and he was gone. So when Yahweh was in charge, when he was running it, it was a place of anointing, wisdom, charity, and life. But look, once man took over, look what it became. It became a place of chaos and backbiting, a place of greed, and a place of decay. Just how we've always said, look, when the Father's in control or when Yahushua's in control, it's going to be what it's supposed to be. But when we go to sticking our grubby little mitts in it, we mess it up, right? That's why he said when he told them to build an altar, and he told them when you build it out of stone, don't put no tools on it, because then it's not what Yahweh made it when you put a tool on. And it's the same thing here. When we put our hands in it, we started forcing it to fit what we wanted it to be. He had to leave. He was like, this isn't it. And we know that at the crucifixion, when the veil tore and everybody got a look at what was back behind it, there wasn't nothing there. Nothing there. They've been just kind of winging it this whole time, right? How many times we've seen, what is it in Kings, or when the high priest runs in there and says, "Hey, we found the book." It's only been 70, 80 years, you know what I mean? But we found it, you know. I think it was like 90 years in between, you know. So, like I said, when he is in charge of it, and it's the same thing in our lives, same thing in our homes, same thing in our assemblies, when he's in charge, that these are the things, the anointing, wisdom, charity, life, these things are going to flow. And that's what's going to be there. But when we take it away from him, or when he's not even in the building, right, and we're doing our own thing, we end up with the rest of it. And how many assemblies, and I'm talking about just all around, I'm not pointing any fingers, I'm just asking a question. How many assemblies have we seen? How many have we been to? How many have we heard of? How many have shown up in the news where all you're getting is the four things on the bottom of the page? Okay? So what we need to do is we need to remember he is the one that's in charge of this whole thing. So we need to step out of the way, let him run it. And when he's in it, we know it's going to be what he wants it to be. It's going to be the right thing, right? When he's doing it. So, but anyway, the tabernacle is a good example here, because we know what it was like when it started, because we see that in the book, right? We also know what it was like when it was at the end, but we've seen that in the book. And when you point that out, there is nobody in this world that can come behind you and say, "Oh, well, you're just being mean about that person," or these. No, that's the truth. That's what happened. That's the documentation. So the point is, let's let him run the show, right? Let's let him be first and foremost. We do a lot of things, right? Do a lot of things, but if he's not in it, then it ain't what it's supposed to be. What are we even doing here? Does that make sense? You know, if he's not the you know, if the Father and his Son, if they're not the first order of business, then why are we even here? So anyway, that's going to do it for our lesson today. I know it was a little short, but like I said, I wanted to talk about a few of these things. But we love you and appreciate you, and we'll